Hello, human body systems. Here's our quick lesson on the integumentary system, which is composed of the hair, skin, and nails. A quick overview of the functions of the integumentary system. So this gentleman has peeled his integumentary system off so that you can see we're talking about the skin and everything on the skin here. So the integumentary system is typically considered the largest organ of the body, making up 15 to 20% of total body mass. Now, this is not true for people that suffer from significant obesity. If your body fat makes up more than 20% of your total body mass, then your actual subcutaneous body fat is your largest organ in your body. But in general, skin is considered to be the largest organ. The functions are many and varied. For example, the skin functions as a barrier to the outside world. Your skin is a physical barrier to things like water. Your skin is completely waterproof. It serves as a chemical barrier to certain substances that may get on your skin but you don't want inside of your body. And then it's a barrier to biological agents such as viruses and bacteria. Your unbroken skin is completely impervious to things like viruses and bacteria. There's a homeostatic function of the integumentary system. It prevents water loss, again, by being waterproof. You're not just constantly losing water due to evaporation, unless, of course, your body temperature gets to be too high, in which case your sweat glands release some water onto the surface of your skin to cool you by evaporative cooling. If your body temperature becomes too low, your integumentary system tries to warm you up by fluffing up the skin on the surface a little bit. So this is why you get goosebumps. It's an attempt to trap a little bit of air near the surface of the skin to warm you up. Although as we've evolved, we've lost a lot of our body hair, so that's not as effective anymore. There are sensory functions. Your skin has a ton of sensory nerve fibers running throughout it so that you can keep in contact with the outside world and know what stimuli you're experiencing. Secretory functions. Your skin secretes vitamin D. The only way that you can get vitamin D is by synthesizing it from sunlight that comes into contact with your skin, unless you're taking something like a supplement or eating it. But the only way that your body makes vitamin D is through the skin and in contact with sunlight. It secretes lubricants for the hair, so that's like sebum that come from the oil glands to keep the hair lubricated so they're not brittle and break. And then the skin secretes pheromones from certain types of sweat glands in your body that are localized more in the armpits and sometimes in the groin region. And pheromones are just chemical messengers that exit the body that other individuals of your species can smell, that give them a little bit of unconscious information about you. And then the skin also excretes stuff. When you sweat, there are certain minerals and substances in that sweat that come out along with the water. So we can't talk about the skin and the integumentary system without discussing the proteins that make it up. The skin is made of mostly protein. The first type of protein is called keratin. The function of keratin is for strength and waterproofing of the skin. You can see that when you get water on your skin, the water kind of beads up on your skin instead of absorbing all in. Your hair, nails, and your outermost layers are abundant in this protein keratin, which makes them so strong. So that's why your nails are harder than the rest of your skin, and your hair is relatively strong, is because it contains a lot of this strength protein keratin. The second skin protein is called melanin. We've talked about melanin before, but melanin is the pigment that causes your skin to become browner and browner as you have successively higher levels of melanin. So an individual with very little melanin in their skin is this pale pinkish color, and then as the amount of melanin in the skin increases, the skin color becomes darker. So the function of melanin in the skin is to absorb UV radiation to protect your DNA from damage caused by ultraviolet radiation from the sun. So the more melanin an individual has in their skin, the better protected they are from sunlight. So I put this picture in here as an example. There is a condition of this type of cell that makes melanin that some of the melanin producing cells just stop working, and in those individuals there are patches of skin. As you can see here with this individual, she has patches of skin that are missing melanin, and this condition is called vitiligo. Elastin is another really important protein of the skin. It makes your skin stretchy, so that's why you can like grab a piece of your skin and pull on it, and when you let go, it'll snap back to where it was in the beginning, is because of this protein called elastin. Makes the skin elastic. So the final protein of the skin that we're going to discuss is collagen. Collagen provides the support structure for your skin. This is the main protein of your body. 75 to 80% of all the protein in your skin is collagen, but then your bones are made of collagen, your connective tissues are made of collagen. Collagen is found everywhere. And as you age, collagen production decreases significantly in your body. So here's a picture of that. This is Meryl Streep. This side of the picture is from when she was much younger. You can see the skin on her face is still smooth and unwrinkled because she still has significant collagen production and repair in her skin. And then as you age, the collagen production decreases, and so things like wrinkles and fine lines can form in the skin because there's not as much collagen, there's not as much structural support. And then I just thought this was interesting, so I wanted to include this. So this condition here is called cellulite, and this is present in most females on the planet. And the reason for that is the way that female collagen structure is in the skin is in this very linear, banded-like structure here, versus male collagen structures have this more of a crisscross pattern to it. And so when a female gains subcutaneous fat, the fat lobules can kind of poof out through those bands of collagen and give the skin kind of a wrinkled appearance. That's the cellulite here. Versus a male, when a male gains weight, the fat cells enlarge, but that cross-hatched kind of collagen structure holds the skin a little bit tighter so it doesn't get that bumpy appearance nearly as often. So that's why almost all women have cellulite somewhere on their body, and very, very few men have cellulite. Moving on to the actual structure of the skin. So the skin is in layers. The most superficial layer is called the epidermis. This is what comes into contact with the outside world. This is followed by the dermis, which is the middle thickest layer of the skin. And then the deepest layer of the skin is called the hypodermis, or also oftentimes referred to as the subcutaneous layer. So the epidermis is the outermost layer of the skin. It's made of epithelial cells, many, many layers of epithelial cells, the outermost layers being dead epithelial cells that kind of flake off. Remember, epithelium is the type of tissue that covers surfaces, and so the epithelial cells are covering the surface of your skin. The functions of the epidermis are for protection, so if something were to pierce the epidermis, then it doesn't pierce all the way into the dermis to have any kind of effect on your blood flow. The epidermis is so covered in so many layers of cells to help protect you. And then it also functions with absorption, so if there's something on the skin that you want to absorb, like maybe a topical medication or something, that will be absorbed through the epidermis. The epidermis contains an abundance of keratin and melanin, those skin proteins. This kind of bottom layer here of the epidermis is where the melanin producing cells are. That's these brown ones here. Another important function of the epidermis is that this is the layer that actually does the vitamin D synthesis when your skin comes into contact with sunlight. Vitamin D is extremely important for your whole body. It helps with calcium absorption, so it protects your bones. It can help with the production of certain molecules like dopamine and serotonin to keep you happy. So it's really important that you get about 10 to 15 minutes of sunlight each day on your exposed skin to make sure that you synthesize enough vitamin D. So us living in Montana, unfortunately, we don't get as much direct sunlight for most of the year. So during the fall, winter, and even the spring, it can be important for us to supplement with vitamin D because we just can't get enough sunlight outside to synthesize as much as we need. Moving on to the dermis. The dermis is the thickest layer of the skin. It's the middle section beneath the epidermis but above the subcutaneous layer. It contains most of the important structures of the skin, so things like sweat glands, hair follicles, oil glands, different types of sensory structures. So there are sensory nerve endings, but then there are also structures such as this little thing. This is called a Pacinian corpuscle, which you'll learn about in the activity for this week, which is like a pressure sensor. There's immune cells that travel around in here, so if something were to pierce its way through the epidermis and some type of pathogen were to get into the dermis, you've got immune cells that are running through here, cleaning that kind of stuff up. The dermis contains an abundance of collagen and elastin proteins to keep it strong but also stretchy. So this is kind of an interesting thing here. The boundary between the epidermis and the dermis has all of these little bumps called dermal papilla, and the function of these is to increase the surface area between the epidermis and the dermis to allow for movement of materials between the two layers. The final layer of the skin is the hypodermis or subcutaneous layer. The primary function of the hypodermis is to store your fat. So fat is important. functions as insulation and cushion for the skin. It's also a very, very important source of energy in people who aren't metabolically damaged. If your body is able to utilize body fat for energy, it's a very abundant source of energy. One thing about fat is that it is much less dense than muscle tissue, so it takes up a significantly larger amount of space. So that's why people that have a large amount of body fat just have larger bodies in general, is because you can see here, this is a 5-pound example of body fat and a 5-pound example of muscle. You can see just how much more space is taken up by the body fat than the muscle. So here's scans of 2 individuals, 2 females of the same height. You can tell that they're female because of the thickening of the fat around the hip region. So 2 females of the same height but of significantly different weights. You can see the subcutaneous fat is just a layer of fat right above the muscle but beneath the skin that can tend to accumulate in the midsection and the thighs, especially of women.